All right, today I'm going to be tearing into the clutch on a Suzuki King Quad 750. We've got the plastics off. I've done several other videos on the King Quad. We're actually swapping this motor out. Then we're going to go through and rebuild the other motor. But to start, I want to show you guys the clutch assembly here, how to replace the belt, how to pull the front primary sheave off as well as the secondary sheave, and how to tighten everything back up and what that looks like. So stick with me here. If you guys have questions or comments, make sure and leave those below. I appreciate a thumbs up if you found this video helpful. We're going to go ahead and take all of these 8mm bolts off here. We're going to pull this cover off at this time. Thanks for watching. We've got the 8mm all the way around here. We've got your brake pedal here that's going to be a little bit in the way, but I'm going to try to pull this cover without having to remove this brake lever here. All right, we've got 10 8mm bolts all the way around this cover here, and then we're able to just take and pull this off. And that is your clutch assembly there. You want to make sure that there's no dirt and debris inside this cover here. You also want to inspect all this, make sure that that's in good condition. I like to keep all the clutch parts together. So I'm going to put the bolts down in this cover here. Then we've got a cage that sits here that also takes 8mm bolts. Got 4 bolts that hold that cage on, then we're able to just take and pull that cage out of there just like that. Again, keeping these parts with our clutch cover there. We've got a 17mm bolt here. That's just regular threads. It's about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches long. And that will just, we'll be able to slide that secondary clutch off of there. The fronts, there's a little bit more to it here. Go ahead and take our 17mm again. Regular threads, you can spin that one off. These bolts are similar in length. The front is actually a little bit longer, and then the back secondary clutch here has a little bit bigger flange on it. So you can see hopefully you can see there the difference there. Again, about the same length. I'm going to hold them this way. This one is for the front there. This one's for the back. A little bit bigger flange on the back clutch bolt there. Put those in. Now we've got a spacer here that we're going to be able to pull off. It's important we get that going the right direction when we're going back together. I'll show you what that looks like. Take and slide that off. Now we can take and pull our front. This is our movable sheave and pull it off. You do want to keep your hand over top of here because underneath of here you've got rollers. And then these I believe are called weights. Right here, or maybe they're called spacers, something like that. You want to make sure that those stay in place there. Your rollers that are here can also fall out. There's what your rollers look like there. There's kind of some clutch dust down in here. I'm going to clean this out really good. Clean this all up. You don't need to take oil and saturate this full of oil or grease. A lot of times people think that you have to do that. You don't have to. And then going back together then, just take this, make sure those spacers are in place there. You can just take and slide that down in those grooves there. That'll hold everything together. Now if we take and flip this upside down, those rollers and those weights are going to go everywhere. So we want to make sure that we set that in there properly. We've got our spacer here. That's what the spacer looks like. Doesn't matter, both sides are the same, so it doesn't matter which direction that goes in. Then we have our belt here. It's important you watch the second part of this video. I'm going to show you how to install these. You want to make sure that these are done properly. If you get these put on there the wrong way or you don't go in the correct order, you're going to have some serious issues, some serious clutch problems, and potentially a broken motor. So we've got our fixed sheave that will slide off there. It's got splines that you need to line up there, so if it's not coming easily, make sure you check and get that pulled off, straight off of there. Now we have boots that are here. That's this air duct, and it was here. And so we've got a clamp, and then we've got a boot that's back here. What we are doing actually is pulling this entire panel off of here and installing it on our new motor. So that's why we're pulling all these parts off, and then I'm going to show you guys installing this clutch assembly on the new motor. So now what we're going to do is remove our 8mm so this inner clutch panel can be pulled off of there. We've got a couple different spacers. We've got two spacers that go on the cage. You want to make sure we don't lose those. So we've got a dowel pin here, and then we've got the same thing down below here. And those, if we can't pull them out, once we get this panel off of there, we will for sure be able to pull them out. But I just don't want to lose these. So when we're carrying this motor over to our bench to get rebuilt, I don't want to lose these spacers. Those go on the clutch cage. So those will set with our other clutch parts. We've got 8 millimeters here to remove. Shoot, we have 10 right here. Our 10th one. Get that pulled off of there. Then we're able to just take this inner panel off of there just like that. Now I'm going to clean up this area because our next job is going to be to pull this motor. We've got our drive shaft in the rear that we got to pull apart. I've already pushed the front differential forward so we can slide that drive shaft out. And then like I said, I'll show you putting that new motor back in there and kind of what issues you're going to have there. I appreciate you guys watching. If you have questions or comments, again, make sure you leave those below. If you need some of these parts or some of these tools, make sure you let me know that in the comments below as well. Some of these I'll put links. I'll try to do my best. The tools that you need, I'll put links below for those. So thanks a lot for watching. All right, we're going to get this King Quad 750 buckled up here. We've got the front clutch that we're going to put on, our secondary, our rear clutch here, our belt, and then our belt cover. I put in the inner clutch cover, just a handful of bolts. I showed you how to take that off. I didn't feel it necessary to show you how to put that back on. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. You just want to make sure you've got your gaskets and behind both of these spots here. Make sure your boots on the rear and in the front are put on there and the clamps tightened up. So you can actually have all of your fenders and your panels on when you do this. You do need to have your footwell off to do this. We pulled the actual brace and everything off. I think I showed you that when we were pulling this apart because our footwells were actually, it was a mess. So anyways, pulled the entire brace off of there as well as the footwell here. Now we've got just these other clutch components here that we need to finish putting back together. So if you guys have questions or comments, make sure you leave those below. If you've got other ideas on videos on this King Quad 750, maybe leave those in the comments below. I'll try to get to that. We see plenty of these machines in here, and so we can do some of those service videos for you. Just let me know what you're thinking. Also, we've done charging system on the other side. I've showed you how to remove front and rear fenders. I've showed you how to service the four-wheeler, giving you an overview, some of the things we do and don't like. And then I'm going to tear into the motor here in another video, and I'll have that posted. So leave those comments below. If this video has been helpful, if you would give us a thumbs up, it helps us out. I do appreciate you guys watching. These special tools that we use during this video, we like to have those links below. Make sure you click on those if you're needing those tools. Do appreciate you guys watching. All right, the first thing that we're gonna do is take this fixed sheave here. This is the smallest of the three pieces that we have. We're gonna slide that on. You've got splines here. Make sure those splines are lined up. If they're not for some reason lined up, don't just take and start beating this on there. You want to make sure you get those splines lined up and push that on there. Should be fairly smooth there. Next, we have your spacer here. It looks like this. Any kind of dirt and debris, you want to make sure you get wiped off of there. This is just going to take and slide on there just like that. You can see it's got a little bit of grease down in there. I'm actually going to take and slide that on the splines just to keep that from getting rusty or anything. It shouldn't get any kind of moisture in there. Thing you want to make sure of, though, is that you don't get that grease on your sheaves here. If that grease is on the sheaves, it's going to cause your belt to slip. Could create some potential problems there. So next thing we're going to do, we can take and slide this sheave on there. This is the rear. This is the secondary clutch. Sometimes this one's a little bit more challenging to get lined up. You do, because when you're turning this back sheave here, what you're actually a lot of times doing is actually turning the shaft too. So you do want to maybe pull it out slightly, give it a little bit of a turn, and then try pushing it back in there again. That's what that sheave looks like there. That's pretty straightforward. The next thing is what you're going to want to pay attention to. We want to make sure you get the right bolt on there. Remember, we talked about this when we were pulling these clutches off. The one with the larger flange is going to go to our secondary clutch. So we're going to get that installed there. I'm actually going to take and put a little bit of thread lock on here. These bolts right here, you want to make sure that they do not come off of there. These clutches are spinning at an incredibly fast rate. If these spin off, you're gonna have some serious clutch problems, and it may get into your crankcase back here. You just don't want that to happen. So thread lock those. It's easy to do. Go ahead and just do that before you tighten that bolt up. All right, we're gonna take our impact now. We're gonna tighten this up. Make sure it's good and snug. All right, now what we're gonna do is take 2 bolts. Now, you can actually use the bolts that you remove out of the cover here. That's the exact size that you need. These are similar. They aren't the exact bolt out of the cover, but they're the exact size that we need. We're gonna take and we're gonna run these bolts in here just like that. You're only gonna get a couple threads in there, but make sure you turn those in a couple threads. And then what I do is take and just tighten these up. All right, what that is doing is spreading your clutch sheaves open. Okay, if you do not do that, you will not be able to get this front sheave on there properly. You'll tighten it down and it'll be in the wrong location. So now we can take and put our belt on there. Now we can take this sheave and slide it on there. We're gonna have to push down our brake pedal a little bit to get it on there. Now slide it all the way on. Now what I do is take my fingers here and I'll actually pull on that belt a little bit, so I'm able to slide this clutch sheave on even farther. Okay, once you get that clutch sheave on there far enough to see some threads, then you can grab your spacer and your bolt and put those on there. You want to make sure that you put it on this direction here. It's going to have the deeper cup towards the front. It's going to look like that. On the back side there, you're going to have a little groove, and that's where those splines are going to be. If you do not have these 8mm bolts ran in there and the sheave spread apart, you're not going to be able to push this plate on far enough. You're not going to be able to get this spacer on far enough. You're actually going to pinch this plate here onto these between the splines and your spacer, and it's going to kind of give it a false sense that it's tightened up. Everything's going to look good. You're going to buckle things up, and you're going to start your four-wheeler. It'll run for a little bit, but you start going at any high speed at all, and this bolt's going to loosen up because this plate's going to vibrate enough to where it's going to allow this spacer and this bolt to be loosened up. Even with thread lock, this bolt will not hold if you do not have this done properly. So slide that on. Now we're going to put thread lock on this bolt as well. And then we're going to take and tighten this up. I like to keep pressure on this at all times. That way it doesn't loosen up. And then we're going to take and tighten this up. Now this belt should be loose. We should be able to do that. That shouldn't be any issue at all. If it's tight already, then you know that you have not spread these sheaves out far enough to get this belt and this plate on there correctly. So make sure you've got that in the position that I have it. Now we can actually remove these bolts here. Okay, now if we take and spin our clutch, this belt is going to work its way out to the outside of this sheave, or the top side. So you can see it spinning there. It's about out to where it needs to be. It doesn't have to be all the way, but I do like to get it pretty close. That way when we start the four-wheeler, it's in the right position there. It doesn't take and jerk it quick. Now we are going to grab our cage here. Make sure that this bearing is good. I showed you that when we took this apart, because that bearing is actually going to ride right on there. You have to push our brake lever down. Make sure you've got a dowel pin up top and on the bottom. Our top one stayed on the four-wheeler. Our bottom one is in the cage there. So now we're going to take and push this in. Okay, you should be able to feel it kind of push and fall into place there. Now I'm going to take these bolts. I don't like to use an impact right away to start these, so I'm going to run a couple turns in just to make sure that they're all starting properly. I don't want to start a bolt if it's cross-threaded or not in there the right way. Okay, we got all those cage bolts in there. There's 3 of those cage bolts. Now we've got our clutch cover. I'm going to dump these bolts out. You want to make sure that this gasket is in good condition, and then we can take and slip this on. That gasket should stay in place there. You shouldn't have any issues there. Now, same thing, I like to take and start these bolts before I start tightening them up with an impact. Okay, some people are going to say you shouldn't tighten them up with an impact. If you know how to control an impact and you know when to stop, there's no issues with an impact. Some people are going to argue with me, I know they are, but that is fine. I know where to stop. I'm not going to get too hard on these 8mm bolts. They are small bolts, and I would not crank on them if I were you. If you need to just use a socket, feel free to use a socket. I don't know what the torque on these little bolts should be, but it's not very much. It should be 10 of those 8mm bolts. Just snug those up. All right, we've got the entire clutch cover on there. We're going to put our footwell on there, and then we're going to buckle things up. There will be a little bracket on the back of the foot brace here that we need to bolt this right cable to. Then we've got our clips here that are going to sit on the front and on the back of that cover there. So that is a complete belt and clutch replacement and service on the Suzuki King Quad 750. The 500 and the 450s would be the same thing, as well as the 700s. Again, if you guys have questions, make sure and leave those below. Appreciate you guys watching.